Arthur, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're a super experienced economic developer who spent time in a variety of different locations. You've been in Texas, you've been in Oklahoma. What brought you to Cedar Park?
Really is the stability, right? We were talking about our city manager earlier, and she just celebrated, Brenda Evans, her 30-year anniversary with the city, right? And Brenda, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to screw this up, but I think 24 of that's been spent as the city manager, which, of course, is unheard of in that type of role, right? It's stressful. You're managing a lot of people, dealing with a lot of politics. And to be sustainable and successful in that role and to grow the city of Cedar Park like she has is nothing short of remarkable, right? And so when my wife and I were looking to come back to Texas, right, there were, one or two things that I was really interested in. One, possibly coming back down to another regional partnership, right? There's only, there's 3 now in the Austin area. And 2, stability and a strong organization. And so when I saw this role pop up, I told my wife, I was like, I think this is a good opportunity. I'd say known Brenda, but it wasn't like we were friends or anything. But, I'd been hosted out here in the HEB Center suite a number of times when I was with Opportunity Austin. Ben White, and before Ben White, Phil Brewer, city's economic developer, had hosted us. And, Brenda would be at the games and we would get to interact with her. Even one of our ACMs now, Chris Koppel, would be at the games. And so when I started looking at the city management and leadership, I was like, they're still here. And so I was like, there must be something going on to have that stability. I want to be a part of that team. So that's what got me here to Cedar Park.
Yeah, well, and what kind of advantages do you feel like it gives you to have that stable city manager and that stable group of staff around you?
So to have someone like that in place in city leadership for so long, it really comes down to someone who knows the vision of, not only the current council, but councils previously, right? When you talk about planning areas, development areas, it's someone that can really educate, and I don't want to say tell because it's not that, right? The city manager, serves at the behest of the council and the mayor, but it's bringing others along, right? When, you may get a new turnover with council or whatever, that may want to change something. You have somebody there to say, hey, going back to, the year 2005, here's why we put this in place, and here's something you should think about, right? It's not necessarily communicating that, hey, this is my way and this is how we're going to do it. No, it's just educating new council members, a mayor, and getting their feedback on some of those things that were suggested by previous councils and why we're doing things a certain way.
So. That makes a lot of sense. So fast forwarding a little bit, you've been here for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in April, I think, if I'm correct.
Yes, correct.
What's changed over your time here so far?
Man, in 2 years, I'd say the biggest piece is just the notoriety that Cedar Park's been getting. Right, that was one of the things that we picked up in the strategic plan, and actually the number one thing that they said we should execute on first, and it was marketing. Right, and so we brought on a national PR team, and they did some studies. They looked at site selectors, they looked at potential workers or employees that would relocate here to take jobs with some of our larger employers here, and a lot of people didn't know about Cedar Park.
Really?
Right, where we were, that some of them didn't even know we were in the state of Texas. And so my aha moment around that, I was at actually a chamber breakfast actually that they host here. Shout out to Tony Moline, our president and CEO of the Cedar Park Chamber. But there was a gentleman there who was from South Texas, born and raised, never left, that had just, I think, relocated here in the last 3 years and was working for a hotelier in the Round Rock area. We were talking, and he knew about Austin, but he didn't know about any of our communities here in Williamson County, right? So he had never heard of Round Rock. He had never heard of Cedar Park. And so when you really stop to think about, this is a person that was, again, born and raised and never left the great state of Texas, doesn't know we exist, then that company that's sitting in New York, that company that's sitting in South Korea, that company that's sitting in California, they have no clue we exist, right? So that's the biggest change I think we've seen here. It's just the publicity that Cedar Park's been getting.
Yeah, and building the reputation. I mean,
Correct.
And
Yeah.
I'd say now I feel like Cedar Park has a super strong reputation, not only as being business forward, but also a great place to raise kids,
Yes.
a great place to to build your family, things along those lines, which all contribute to building the brand of our city. What do you and so I guess this is kind of a tie-in to that previous thing. Is there one thing that you say you're proudest of in those 2 years?
One, the team that we've created, that'd have to be first and foremost. And two, I would have to say some of the projects that we've, of course, landed, right? Like a Novus comes to mind. Even things that haven't led to immediate jobs, but the Spaceport Development Corporation, being able to work on that with our county commissioners. Scott Smith, our assistant director, put a lot of time and effort helping that get over the finish line as well. So those are probably the biggest things that I'm most proud of here.
And so moving forward a little bit, what are you most excited about for the future then?
Oh, all these projects that are close to the finish line here. But I think there's two big projects. One the city owns. It would be close to about 100 acres developable once all the reclamation work is done. But we own a quarry that's west of town called the Lime Creek Quarry. And, being able to focus that property on creating a master plan and master development that, again, it's not about what I want to see or, anybody within internal staff to the city wants to see. It's about the community, right? It's about, a combination of bringing in outdoor space, trails, some parks, but also adding in some more of those things that Cedar Park still needs, right? The retail, restaurant, shops, but then also figuring out a way to incorporate job creation into that, right? So having a focus on life sciences, biotech, and some of that as part of that development. And then two, it's going to be the spaceport as well, right? So in the creation of our Central Texas Spaceport Development Corporation, I know a mouthful, what that's going to allow us to do moving forward is, be competitive and put an application through the Texas Space Commission for what they call the SURF grant. And that will allow us to go in and at least start our initial phase of what we call a physical spaceport, right? And so that physical spaceport will be a combination of different testing facilities, higher ed facilities, and innovation facilities as well. So those are probably the two biggest things that I'm looking forward to in the future. And those are not quick things, right? These are development opportunities that are going to play out over, 5 years.
Yeah.
If we're lucky, less, but probably 5 years or more. So.
Right. And then hopefully as well, the benefits will go far, far beyond that. That's just kind of the beginning of seeing the return on investment.
Well, yeah. And I mean, the spaceport in particular, right? I mean, that's going to benefit, I don't want to say just Cedar Park and not even just Williamson County, but it's going to benefit the entire Central Texas area. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was one of the things I was most interested in asking you about because I feel like I hear the word spaceport. I'm like, that sounds super exciting, but it's also like, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so learning a little bit more about that, I feel like is super useful because it's kind of educating our people on all these exciting things that are coming up,
Yeah. Well, spaceport means that we're just going to be launching rockets here out of Cedar Park.
Okay.
So, no,
right out of my household.
But that's where people go, right?
Well, exactly,
we're gonna be
right?
Firing rockets and testing rockets and all that stuff. So, and sending stuff into orbit.
Well, but and I think with some nuance, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it that, just that's not the case because there's so much skill that goes into, working in space and rockets and propulsion, I guess, and all these other things. And one of the things which, having spoken to the mayor, I'm a little bit more familiar with, we've got such a vast amount of skilled talent here in Cedar Park and in the surrounding areas. And industries like that, right? We're a hub for that highly skilled labor, people who have the qualifications to be working on important tasks like that. And so I think a spaceport, has all these other aspects to it. Education, right? All of the building that goes into some of the early stage component of those rockets, right? The actual launching will not occur within our super crowded city, So kind of moving a little bit forward, Central Texas has obviously exploded over these last few years, incredible amounts of growth all over the region. But one thing which I've always felt, both from a firsthand perspective, living in Cedar Park, but also kind of from reports from other people, is that we've somehow prepared ourselves pretty darn well for all of the growth that's come in. Like, I don't feel our infrastructure cracking whatsoever. What do you feel like has been one of the causes for us handling that growth so well?
Yeah, and I may not get all of this correct, but being from this area, growing up here at a time where people didn't know Cedar Park was a city, right? I always tell the story, I played a lot of sports growing up, and, whenever we came up here this far north, I grew up in North Austin area, went to Round Rock schools, but we would travel up here and we would come straight through Cedar Park and hit Leander. But as a kid growing up, I just thought this was all Leander, right? Because at the time, Cedar Park didn't have a high school. I don't even know if they had a middle school at the time. Right. And everything that I did revolved around sports was done in Leander. So that's all we knew growing up. But I think, the reason that this has been so sustainable and successful is because Cedar Park started growing, I think, at a time before there was, to where we are now in the Austin area, right? It's you can't go anywhere now without development. And I think when you really started to see us grow, it was really around housing. A lot of people that would come in and work for the Dells of the world, they didn't necessarily want to live in Round Rock. They could come to Cedar Park at the time and, get a little bit more land, executive housing for a little bit cheaper than what you can get at the time if you live closer into Austin or, in a more denser community that had already kind of blossomed like a Round Rock. Right. Great community, so not knocking Round Rock. I don't want anybody out there to think that. Went to Round Rock schools. My wife graduated from Round Rock High, so a super fan. But so it really started with housing, right? And we laid a real good foundation there. And then with housing, what you start to see come in is the amenities, right? So a lot of the retail, the shops, the restaurants, the strip centers, right? I mean, you see the Whole Foods, Costco's, all that stuff kind of comes in once you have that demographic and the people in place and the residents to support that. And then you start to see, I think, just over a decade or so ago, and not to say that Cedar Park didn't focus on this as well, of course, but I think now more so it's shifted towards bringing in more of those primary job employers and business development, right?
What does that mean? What's a primary job employer?
So that means, jobs that are employing people that are not in the service sector, right? Okay. So when you talk about service providers, that's retail, restaurant, accounting firms, law firms. So those are all service based, right? Versus, a Firefly Aerospace that's actually making a product. So that's what we consider a primary job employer. Not to say that we don't need to retail, but you can kind of see a full circle on how all that supports each other. Right. Because when it comes down to, the economic development side of things, of recruiting a business, right? They're going to want to see that, hey, I can hire people here, but that means that they're going to have somewhere to live, right? So they're going to want to make sure that there's housing and adequate housing, but then also they're going to want things to do, right? So you're going to want those amenities. And so it kind of all ties in together, right? The housing, the amenities, the jobs. Because when it comes to the job aspect, then you have people that are commuting into Austin or, having those hour-long commutes and why when you can locate the businesses here and they can work here. Because I think to the point that you mentioned earlier, Aidan, that the talent is already here.
Exactly.
Right? Because Cedar Park focused early on some of that housing.
Exactly. And so, I think that's a really good cap of why we've been so prepared for the present day. What are we doing now to make sure we're just as prepared for the future?
Yeah, so I think it's sticking to what I mentioned earlier about the good thing of having, stable city leadership. Right. Is making sure that we're sticking to our development plans, right, and our planning areas. And not deviating from that is really important to make sure you get the right developments in the right parts of your city. We also have a tremendous public works team that's here, right? So Eric and his team, shout out to Eric. They're really focused on making sure from a water perspective that our residents are taken care of from a water sustainability. So we don't have a lot of those issues that some surrounding areas won't mention any names, but even other states. And so we're pretty secure in our water for our residents here and even into the future as we continue to grow. And so those are probably the main things that I would say why we've been able to sustain this. So.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. So one thing which I'm super interested about, and obviously I know companies like Firefly, so and anything aerospace related to me is super exciting and interesting. But in your mind, what are some of Cedar Park's greatest business success stories?
Yeah, so we'll start with Firefly, right? You said it. It goes back to, and before my time, so I may get some of the story wrong, but we recruited them here from Hawthorne, California. With I think 4 or 5 people, if that, in 2014, and took a chance on them, right? Incentivized the company that was that small, right? We knew they were growing, so we didn't incentivize them for 4 people, But for a city to go out and take a chance on such a startup company, and mind you, a very risky industry, especially at that time.
Yeah.
Space was not what it is now with everything that's going on with Space Force and our federal government and DoD contracts. Back then, I mean, it was like, why are you incentivizing a space company that has 4 people? But now you fast forward, and through ups and downs, the city's stuck by them. And even to our most recent expansion we did with them, I guess back in November, that announced, there are over 700 people in their organization. They have, I think, 4 or 5 different locations here within Cedar Park alone. The city, even when, Firefly was looking at engine testing and doing hot fire testing and wanted to do it in Cedar Park, are like, yeah, we can't get that through. But the city actually helped them go find and locate a more rural property up in Burnett County in Briggs, Texas.
Really?
To be able to do that, right? And so, I mean, Firefly has to be our biggest success story and most notable, not to discount any of our other great companies that have been here for decades, like Corvalence and Ed Travis and his company, NOV, which is a huge oil and gas company, but also does a lot of manufacturing in other industries. Hyliion, which kind of similar story, we recruited out of Carnegie Mellon. Trying to figure out what year that was, 2017 maybe. And incentivize them again. Another story like Firefly, they had maybe a handful of people and continue to grow, and I think they're close to about 200 people here to this day.
Whoa. Publicly
traded, right? And I missed that part with Firefly. Firefly actually launched their IPO as well last year, so they're also now publicly traded. But
yeah,
I think that goes to what maybe the audience can see on the screen behind me, but Cedar Park is truly a place where innovation happens.
Yeah,
so,
and it sounds like the city has played a big role in helping make that happen. And one thing that was really fascinating about what you just said is, you helped them find locations for things that you're like, hey, even if this doesn't fit here, we're going to work with you to help you find partners elsewhere. To me, that sounds like the city is a lot more of a long-term partner than just someone who's got this kind of like cursory relationship. And to me, in my mind, I think like that's the perfect advertisement for why businesses should want to come to Cedar Park, is they're getting a city that's actively going to engage with you far more than just something on a surface level. It's like, we care about your business. We know that if we cultivate a strong business environment, it's going to reward us in the end, even if that means creating growth all across Central Texas.
Absolutely. Yeah. Reward us, reward our residents. Right. I always go back to, I love this work because it helps bring in jobs, and I've been laid off a couple of times throughout my career. And so I know the importance of having, a job available in the community that you live in when you find yourself without one, right? Yeah. That's of a tremendous importance to me and to the city.
No, I really respect that, and I think that's extremely admirable. So obviously these are some of the stories of Cedar Park on its own. Another, I would say in Cedar Park we've seen tremendous results, tremendous growth, but in Williamson County as a whole, we've also seen some incredible results. What do you think it is about Williamson County as a whole that makes it so attractive for businesses?
I would say business friendly, right? So a lot of our communities, whether you're looking at Hutto, Taylor, Round Rock, Georgetown, can't forget our friend Christian up in Liberty Hill, Leander, our permitting, our development services processes here are a lot smoother to get to. Our development services team will tell you, hey, you got all your ducks in a row. We can give you answers back to all of your submittals within 2 weeks.
Really?
All right, which is unheard of. People come up here and ask us, hey, what's your expedited process like? It's like we kind of laugh. We don't have an expedited process because it's already 2 weeks, right? We don't need one. That's just a normal process. And so that has to be a big one. Being business friendly, I'd say we have a lot of land, right? So you look at places like California, New York, great states, but it gets expensive to build there, whether you're talking about housing or businesses, because you have to build up. And sometimes you can't even do that. Here in the state of Texas, here in Central Texas, you can build out, which helps the affordability as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
I'd say great school districts. You touched on quality of life. I always say there's kind of 4 key components to economic development deal when you're recruiting a company, right? So it's ingredients. So you got a product, right, which is your site. So if you don't have a site, you really can't do anything. Workforce, then you should talk about incentives, and then the last is that quality of life piece. But that quality of life piece doesn't matter if you don't have the incentives to compete with another community or another state, right? So then you check that off. incentives don't matter if you don't have the workforce, right? So you check that off, and then workforce doesn't matter if you have nowhere to put them. So those are your 4 ingredients, and that's why they kind of have to be in order, because one doesn't matter if you don't have the other.
No, I'm sorry.
But yeah, quality of life is a huge deal, and that really kind of seals the deals on a lot of projects, not only for Cedar Park, but other areas that have won deals. So specifically here, LISD, Leander Independent School District, we're the number 1 rated school district in Williamson County, and number 3
Really?
in the Austin region, just behind. Maybe mess 1 and 2 up, but I think Dripping Springs is still 1, Eaton School District is 2, and then Leander ISD is 3, and that's all of Austin area.
Yeah.
And we rank up there, I think, just over 300 as the best highly rated school district in the country.
Wow.
And that's out of 11,000 school districts.
Yeah.
Right. We're also the safest suburban community up here. So you have a lot of safe communities here in Williamson County area. So especially when we're talking with international companies, that always comes to mind. That's always a question that's asked. What is my safety like? What is crime like in your area? And so we can always point to that stat.
100%. Well, and y'all have invested in Wilco has invested in that for many, many years.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing about quality of life. I grew up in New York City. I was there till I was 16, and I think space is definitely a big component in quality of life, at least for me. I used to tell the story that if I tried to play catch with my dad out on our back porch in New York, I would fall off the balcony because there is no back porch, right?
Yeah.
But if in Cedar Park, we can go outside, we can walk to a neighborhood park nearby, and I get to have experiences like that with my family on a day-to-day basis. And an important part of that is space. I think another important part of it for me is, privacy as well. I mean, yeah. I don't have to hear my neighbors playing the drums at all hours. My neighbors can do whatever the heck they want, and it's not my business. Yeah. And that's something that's lovely about I think the city for me is, there's room to grow is kind of the way that I would put it. And I feel super strongly about that.
Well, along those lines, and I'm going to mess up her company name and her name off the top of my head. I can get you this after episode, but no, it's a brilliant young woman and her husband. I don't know that they have kids yet, but I believe she relocated from New York. It's been a little while, but they were able to buy their first home here.
Really?
I think she's in the tech industry, but they actually just opened up a really cool kind of retail restaurant coffee shop type deal.
Okay.
And it's actually right down here on Bell Boulevard, just outside of the Bell District, if you're familiar with that.
Of course.
And you can go in there, play puzzle games, get coffee. I don't know if they have their liquor license yet, but it's just kind of cool board game place and books and all that stuff that you can get in there and have your coffee and drinks while you're there. So go check it out. I'll have to get you the name.
Just find some more New Yorkers around here.
Later on. Yeah.
My gosh.
But I thought that was a pretty cool story, right? And to your point, a lot of people don't have those opportunities to be homeowners, let alone single-family homeowners that are not trapped in a condo type style living, where they have the space and the land, and they can go out and walk with their families or play pitch in the backyard. So yeah.
Well, and I need a lot of room because I never hit the target. Right? I'm actually my dad's even worse than me, so I'm gonna blame him. Oh my God. So as I think about it, what sort of projects and developments do you see Cedar Park as being really interested in fostering right now?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned 2 of those, right? The spaceport, the quarry is the real big focus, right? So for us, that's going to be meaningful, and we're being very, say, picky but selective, maybe is a better term,
right?
To bring in the right developer, because Cedar Park, we're only about 25 square miles, I think, give or take. So we don't have a ton of land left. Now, don't get me wrong, for all those people out there, there's still a lot of land left, a lot of development left in Cedar Park, but we don't have a lot of it left, right? And
sure.
So we're being very intentional and very, very selective on the development partners that we enter into agreements with. So the quarry is a big one for us. Seeing the Bell District through, of course, right? So our beautiful library that was built is the anchor for that project. But of course, as you know, as part of that development, you have so much other stuff coming, right? You have housing, you have retail, you have restaurants. We already got a lot of the outdoor space, amphitheater, the trails. that are incorporated there. You have some economic development space, right? You have some Class A office space that's being developed. So that's a big development I know that the city's wanting to see through. And then, we can talk about Cedar View, but I'm sure you drive past that almost every day and you can see all the stuff that's going up there, right? With the new NFM, the Shields, and Cedar Park's first hotel convention center, right? And first full service hotel.
Yeah.
And that's kind of remarkable that a city like us that, we've had this tremendous growth and success, that the 1,100, give or take, hotel rooms we have here now, none of them are full service. So the Marriott Hotel Convention Center will be the city's first full-service hotel.
Yeah.
Yep. So those are some big developments. There's some more out there that are, still coming down the pipe, like Perfect Game and some of those others. But, some pretty cool developments we're working on. And then we do still have some larger land tracts left on the east side of town. We have a 254-acre tract of land with a group out of Austin called Riverside Development. And then we also have about 330 acres that's just north of that off of Whitestone as well, that a group, again, out of Austin owns called Endeavor. So a lot more opportunity left out there is what I'm saying.
Well, and it sounds too like there's plenty of resources for the right investments, and there are no resources at all for the wrong ones.
Yeah, there you go.
Which I think is
I like the way you put that.
Right, which I think is a great way to operate. You mentioned something that I've gotten to watch over my last 6 years or so in the city. You talked about the Bell District a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that's going to look like? I'm super excited for it.
Yeah. Well, I kind of just mentioned it, right? I mean, it's a master development. The easiest way to put it is it's going to be America's newest downtown, is what I always say. Right? No, seriously, if you think about a city of our size, right, it's, close, let's just say close to 100,000 in population. Who else has the opportunity to build a downtown from the ground up? Right. I don't know. I can't name any city. Send it to me if I'm wrong. But I don't know of any city, right? Because when you start thinking about the history of Cedar Park, we're young, right? We're about 52 years old, I think. And so we've never had that traditional beautiful town square like a Round Rock or Georgetown has, sure. Right? And so the blessing in that, right, is that we haven't had that traditional city center. And so with the vision of our city management to go out over several years and, acquire properties that were up for sale to, finally amass enough acreage. I mean, that's discipline, that's staying steady. That's going back to what I always say, that's sticking to what the vision has been for the city all along, right, and seeing it through, right? And so to acquire that property, to be able to have Cedar Park's first downtown essentially is, I use this word all the time, but it's remarkable. Yeah. Right. That you were able to have a blank canvas to basically build a downtown. Not necessarily a redevelopment. Some of it is, but it's not redeveloping a downtown. It's redeveloping an area into a brand new downtown. Yeah. I mean, that's insane.
It is pretty crazy.
What city gets to do that? So.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just a marvel in. Yeah, it's watching cities grow is always interesting. And I think Cedar Park has so much exciting stuff going on. And I think the Bell District and the vision for the future of the downtown of Cedar Park is something I'm super excited to see over the next 5 years or so. Just how things start sprouting up, what that's going to look like. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very walkable. You're going to have a combination of housing, whether they're for rent properties, for sale properties. You're going to have your office, you're going to have your restaurants, your retail, you're going to have your outdoor space, which is big for the city as well, incorporating that and just, having a very walkable area for the community. I'm thinking a few Michelin star restaurants is like what I'm going in my head. We've already got some. That's hopefully coming up in Cedar View with some restaurants that I've already announced up there. But the Bell District it's going to be phenomenal. I can't wait to see that full development through. And then I forgot the Farmers Market, Texas Farmers Market, which is every Saturday. Every Saturday, and from my understanding, that's not going away even as that development fully takes shape. Yeah, they're going to keep it there. Yeah, well, it's been so popular. Every Saturday I go out and I drive down Bell, and I'm just like, oh, all right, everybody in the whole city is out again. And it's super wholesome. It's a great place to involve your family. It's a great place to just to meet new people. All these sorts of positive benefits, and it's super great opportunity for small businesses as well. And that goes into the what? Quality of life. There we go. I got the answer right. It's very rare that I get an exam question correct, but I'm proud.
I feel like that was a good one, easy one for you.
Well, you did lay it up for that hurts. You don't give me any credit even when I win. So Arthur, just to close this out, if say a potential investor or someone who's interested in learning more about Cedar Park is watching this, what would you suggest as a good first step for them to get more information?
Yeah, they can go to our website, cedarparktexasedc.gov. I believe it's
com. See, it's .com.
Is it com?
Yes.
Is it com? Okay, I know our city's .gov. .com. Sorry, America. But and reach out. We have a contact us page. If not, they can reach out to me at arthur.jackson@cedarparktexas, and that is .gov.
I love that. Arthur, thank you so much for your time today. Greatly enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.